Hey, you're out in the garage with TheEZGZ. Today's project is going to be synchronizing my carburetors. Alright, we're going to talk about synchronizing dual throat carbs. This is a very popular, common linkage. There's a lot of different types out there, and I think the information that I'm going to provide you with right now is going to be adaptable to just about anything that you have. The thing of it is, you've got to have these carburetors doing the same thing at the same time. When you synchronize your carburetors using the flow meter and with at least one or both of these linkage arms disconnected completely, that way you know that you're not just off the stop or something, because you might want to make a little adjustment on the airflow screw or something, and anything you do to one side is going to affect the other side when these are connected. So to simplify that procedure, and I've gone over that already, how you use your flow meter, that anybody knows anything, although I cover this stuff so many times and I still get questions on it all the time. These are two popular flow meters. This one doesn't clear my fiberglass. I can't get it in the right position to read the darn thing, unless maybe I want to squat on the floor, but the dial, if it's up higher, it's difficult to see. And you want this to be accurate. This is probably the better one out of the two as far as, I don't know, simplification and accuracy and just stick it on there. This one is the one that I have to use in this application because I've got a bigger offset. And yes, the little plastic ball does bounce around in there, but as long as it's doing the same thing on the other side and you adjust it, you adjust the flow so you get it in mid-scale by turning this little dial up and down. This is the first one I've had, and I only got this probably, you know, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. But for 20 years, this is the one, and I still had to use it the other day. Now, it's, I kid you not, if you can get perfect synchronization, the engine is just smooth, the harmonics, it's music, it's a symphony going on behind you. It's just, when you touch the throttle, it pulls away smooth. There's no snap and pop and jerk, and it's just, you have to experience it to really appreciate it. There's so many of them out there that are working poorly, and people are satisfied with that because they just don't know any better. And it's very hard to eyeball it. And if you have the Delorto book, it goes step by step on how to use this CB performance linkage. So here's some tools that you can use. Or not, I don't know. Come up with something on your own. I like these two. I'm old, I can't see real good. I'm kind of going through life on the Braille system, you know. Everything's touchy-feely and listen and so on and so forth. If, you know, these things are all over the indoor flea markets where people sell tools and stuff, because this is old stuff. You know, carpenters used to use this stuff. I'm not so sure, you know, what trades it comes from, but it doesn't matter. And you can even use drafting tools. Nobody does drafting anymore since I got CAD systems, but there's a lot of those, you know, fine instruments out there. You could use this doggone circle compass. I mean, this is something I bought at Home Depot or Office Max or something like that. You could make it work, or you could just create something. You could just put two things together, put a rivet or a bolt in between, and make something. Be creative. Don't just do it. Okay, so how are we going to use this stuff? Okay, now the first thing is you've got to make sure that things are set up, and you got to make sure important things like these linkages and these holes. Now here I have another linkage system that's got slop in it, and I've learned that you want to take, there's springs that go inside here. There's the spring, and then there's the ball, and it's the ball that wears out. There's a steel sleeve in there, but you're just riding primarily on the main spot of the ball, and you can rotate it or do whatever you want. rather than eyeball it, you can set this and you can pull it through here. And I see that's just a little bit tight. And so you pull it through here and you make sure you got that exactly the same. And you want to like lay your arms down before you assemble a rod, or if you're having extreme difficulty, you may want to take it apart and put these rods on top of each other and make sure that those are the same. Draw a line on a piece of paper. You know, do something to identify that your pivot points are in the same spot. The center of this pivot point to the center of this pivot point to the center of this pivot point. Those are all, if you wanted to have, now, most people, all they do is focus on liftoff. When you touch the throttle, do both of them come off the stops at the same time? But including me, it's extremely difficult to get this thing working where when you lift off at the same time, at the end of the stroke, at the full throttle, are they both on the throttle stops for full throttle? Very rare, very rare. And you say, well, it's close enough, you know. Well, I'm telling you, your cruising range is probably, you know, if it's 1/8 of an inch off the stop, I'd be surprised. So, and there's flexing going on. So you have to take a lot of consideration. Some of these are made out of nylon. Some of them are steel. Some of them are aluminum. There's just so many variations of this stuff, and all of them get wear. And I've tried grease. I've tried graphite. I've tried spray lube. You know, I've done a lot of different things because the problem, especially sitting out in the open like this, and especially going down dirt roads, is if you get lubrication on there, it just attracts dirt and dust and helps grind things away. And so this stuff isn't going to last forever. It's like $100 to replace it, and it seems like a lot of money, but if you want your car to really be, once you've experienced it, you'll insist on it, I'll tell you. And this thing is running better. I had this thing sitting in the back of the garage for a couple of years. I just took it out of the car. It was leaking oil bad. I didn't have very good oil pressure. And I had gotten on that 1300 engine project. And all through my life, I keep learning things. And I'm learning things from my viewers who leave comments, and I watch some other people's videos, although I haven't had much time to do anything lately. So anyhow, we measured that side, and then we measured this side, and we just want to get a little bit of a drag, and we just want to make sure. Now, I originally had this set up, I had to make a change on this side, because what I did is I just put it on here, and I brought it to the end of the shaft rod, made it flush, and I made it flush on the other side, and I said, okay, that's good to go. Well, as it turned out, when I tightened the rod and so forth here with these adjusting screws, the ball end adjusting screws, you can see where this one is tight, and I must have done my adjusting over there. So therein lies another spot. So you've got to continually follow it. And, you know, as your engine warms up, it grows horizontally. And so if you've got the geometry correct, as it heats up and changes, you won't lose that synchronization. Some people will say, well, it works fine when it's cold, but once it gets hot, you know, it kind of has a little stumble to it, has a little sputter to it or whatever. Well, check it cold, check it hot. You have to just keep doing everything right. Okay, then you can take this. Now, for me, this was too tight, and I couldn't get it in there. So I used the longer one to get my distance between these two points. And I said, okay, that's the same. And before I go too much farther, these types of adjusting rods have a left-hand thread and a right-hand thread. You're going to save yourself a lot of grief if you put both of the left-hand thread sides on the top. Put the left hand on the top. If yours is running good or whatever, you know, I'd still change it. Put it on the top. It makes a difference, because then when you're looking down on this nut and you want to loosen it up, if you've got one, I've done it myself, had a left hand on top and a left hand on the bottom. Now, generally, once I get my initial setup, I don't adjust both sides. This is my adjusting side. I don't know why, I just prefer the right hand, because maybe I'm right-handed or something. But this is where I go to do my adjusting. So when I want to begin, if it's off, and I want to begin my adjusting, I usually turn it, and I'll let this swivel to the right, and this one is loose now, so this one will swivel to the right. I loosen that nut, and because this is left-hand thread and upside down, when I go through the loosening and move it, it moves the same way as this nut. So you don't have to keep track in your head. Now, let's see, which one of this is left-hand thread here? Oh, which one? Because you're turning it and turning it. You don't want to strip this stuff. It's pretty delicate stuff. And you keep putting the wrench on it and turning, and it's like, oh, it must be the other way. Then you try the other way and pop, it pops loose. And it's like, if you've got as many cars as I do, muscle memory, gotta dumb it down for an old guy like me. So you want to make the distance up here, you want the left-hand thread on top, you want the same distance, any points of distance, you want to get back and you look at it. Now, I had this ball joint adjuster on the inside, and on my desert race car, that thing is perfect, right on the money, and it was on the outside. So then I got the Delorto book and I looked at the setup drawings and description, and it showed it putting it on the outside. So if yours is on the inside and you're having trouble, maybe you should put it on the outside. And there's something about the angle of the dangle and the geometry when you're doing this. And things, if you have it loose like this, it's going to change. Now, when it comes time to tighten those nuts, what I like to do is I turn the shaft and the joint to the left, and then I tighten this down, and then I'll turn this one to the right and tighten it down, and then I just kind of, after it's tight, then I just kind of neutralize it, okay? So it will find its happy spot. It's going to have a wear spot. You've got all these joints. It's going to find a spot that it's happy. And I can't stress enough, if you've got springs on the sides out here by your carburetor, all you want to use is that clock spring. If you do have to have a tighter return spring, do it from the arm in the center here. Pull on your cable. Find an attachment point. Build a bracket. It's easy if you got a sand car or something like this, and this just happened to come out right. I've made stands that came off of case bolts and done all kinds of different things. And I think the Cadron has some complex thing that goes up against this fan shroud and so on and so forth, but it's you don't want to twist the shaft. Now, both of these carburetors, and I bought these brand new. I kept listening to it and had this little stutter to it. And I got my flow meter and I went from side to side and it was off. And then I went from front to back and that was off. And the way to correct that is with the air bypass screw. So the one that's behind, which in my case was this one here, you open the bypass screw to adjust that flow meter. Now you're really getting anal. A lot of people will just do the one in the fronts and call it good, but if the shaft has flexed or, what I don't know what's going on with this one, but it made a difference. All of a sudden, even there was a noise. It kind of, now that I think back on it, it was kind of like a detonation. It was kind of I thought it was like a lifter because I'm running the chrome Ollie push rods now, and I thought, oh, it's the chrome Ollie and it's ticking, and I've got, I tried to get the, tighten up my rocker shaft assembly so that it wouldn't be banging into the blocks and stuff, but it's like I started moving that and synchronizing it, and that sound went away, and I noticed that I have to, I can't have my fuel screws exactly the same because if one of them is closed and the other one's partially open, you're getting more air through there. I don't know. That may not be true, but you have to tune it by ear with the fuel screws, and it'll give you a guideline. And you want to get these, you know, if you've got a huge variance between these, you might have something, a partially clogged jet or something else going on there. It's just I don't know. These on this particular carburetor calls out 3.5 turns out as a starting point. And I've always found that to be dead nuts with a 60 idle jet. And it's probably a little better to be on the rich side than the lean side. Lean side can cause you heat. It can also cause you more likely to have detonation if you're getting close to it, if you're running unknown gas or cheap gas, you know, because even if you buy premium, and I've said this before, sorry to repeat myself, but there's always new people dropping in asking me questions. This is something we just talked about 2 videos ago, so I'm trying to be complete here. And what'll happen is I was going cross country, like from Denver to Detroit, Michigan, and every time I stopped for gas, it seemed like the octane went up the farther east that I got, and I got away from this high altitude. I started coming down, and the octane was going up at the gas stations, but my idle changed. Sometimes it would run better, sometimes it would run worse, and my fuel mileage even changed, and it depends on how much ethanol you put in there. And I think that today's ethanol is thinner, makes the fuel thinner. They say 10% here. I think it thins down the gas because I've only got these things only 2.5 turns open, and normally, like I said, it'd be like 3.5. So I was even considering going to a smaller jet, maybe a 55, and trying it. But with the smaller idle jet, then you're more prone to getting little clogs and blockages. These 60s do a lot better than the Weber 55s, I'll tell you that. So, okay. Have I got this covered? This took probably a day to figure this out, to come up with this little bracket right here, to make this straight, to get the different angles, to get this far enough back where I could get the full throw. I had problems with this clock spring is sinking down into that crack right there. There actually was a spacer in there, and the clock spring was too tight. You can see that is like a homemade bend on the end, and sometimes spring steel doesn't want to bend. And I don't know when I did that. I don't know if I was just trying to get more tension or what, but it was falling in the slot, and then as I was trying to go for full throttle, it was bending. And then I had it would get in there and it would stick and it would bind. And it's like, what the heck is going on here? Driving me crazy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. TheEZGZ out.